Welcome to the first edition of Bass News for You, the news I cared about and thought you might too. The St. Croix Bassmaster Open season kicked off this week at Clark's Hill Reservoir. Chase Clark took the title with a two-day total of 47 pounds, 7 ounces. Friend of the channel, Kayak and Bassmaster angler Christine Fisher caught limits both days, but sadly was late day one and had a 5-pound penalty. Sounded like she had a blast, seemed in good spirits, knowing that this is her first year, her learning year, fishing out of her Ranger with the Bassmaster Opens, and is now on her way down south to fish the Kissimmee chain, chasing giant bass out of a kayak. That's right, the second stop of the Bassmaster Kayak Series is coming next weekend. Recently, Drew Gregory flew out from his snow-bombed Ohio, landed in Las Vegas, made his way to Lake Havasu, and that's right, took home the first blue trophy of the season with a two-day total of 165.25 inches. 9 out of his 10 fish limit were smallmouth bass caught on the Z-Man Gobius, who says you can't win a derb without light scope, since the only electronics that Drew fishes with is his cell phone for marking waypoints on Google Earth. Pre-fishing for the Kissimmee chain started this week with the event kicking off next weekend, February 1st and 2nd. We chatted with Fluke Master Gene Jensen in live recently, and he's predicting 1 or 2 double-digit giants gonna be caught down there. Can't wait to see how this one shakes out. Another kayak bass fishing news, KBS is working out the regions for future online events, and the map looks pretty amazing. With the 2025 season kicking off, so does the KBF Fish Ops Catch 22 Challenge. And several anglers down south are already uploading monsters to the leaderboard. My good buddy Austin Hoover is already smashing giants with several 20-inch fish hitting the leaderboards. Dalton Albright of Florida leads the big bass leaderboard so far with a 24.25-inch behemoth. Speaking of big bass, KBF is also starting state-level big bass leaderboards for both largemouth and smallmouth bass to establish KBF club state record. Be sure to join KBF and get in on the action. Now moving over to the bass media side, WiredToFish.com has written a few different articles worth reading. First up was the first Texas Legacy Sharelunker bass of 2025 caught on OHIV by Brady Stanford with a 13.13 pound largemouth bass. Jeebus, I could only dream of a double digit like that. Next worth mentioning was an article titled Minnesota DNR Eyes Possible Forward-Facing Sonar Regulations, which was interesting to say the least. And on the other side of the coin, there was an article posted, Side Scan Sonar Used to Find Truck That Drove into Sam Rayburn. It's a pretty cool story. Well, not a cool story of how a truck drove off a bridge, but that's what happened. The folks that were in the truck were rescued by nearby boaters, and then the truck was actually found by a boater using his side scan so that they can begin the recovery process. It was actually well worth the read, and there's some pretty cool video to go with it. Now, in the fishing podcast side of things, on Tackle Talk, in part 2 of a series called Breaking the Mold, Andrew Hayes hosted Josh Plades of the Clutch Swimbait Company, where they took a deep dive into the development of the sub $100 Clutch Eco Glide Bait. Now, side note, for a limited time, you can hop on AmericanLegacyFishing.com and back order a Clutch Eco Glide Bait and save 25% off with code CLUTCH25. Over at the Smallie Talk podcast, hosts Josh Schrenko and Chris Vaughn had Drew Gregory on to discuss his kayak series win at Lake Havasu, as well as a new bait they're developing and dropping at the Columbus, Ohio Fishing Expo. More on that here in a minute. On the Everything Kayak Fishing podcast, I hosted the 2024 Bassmaster Kayak Series Dakota Lithium Angler of the Year, Mr. Russ Snyder's. And we did a recap of the previous season, places he loved to fish, how he did at each event. It was a really cool sit down with one of the best there is in a kayak, Mr. Russ Snyder's. And over at the Kayak Fishing Obsessed podcast, hosted by Darren Wendell of Wendell Fishing, YouTuber John Dalton from the Creek Fishing Adventures YouTube channel joined the podcast to discuss his new bait collaboration with Mule Fishing called the Bluegrass Bug. It's a different spin on a bait that I think you guys will find interesting. Now, over on the YouTube side of things, the Bob Ross of bass fishing, Mr. NDYakAngler, dropped a banger video titled Fishing a Rat Lure for Sunset Bass. It's another beautiful adventure worth firing up and watching on your TV. Now, this next one I've known's been coming for quite some time, but I had to keep a lid on it. But California kayak favorite Greg Blanchard dropped some videos this week featuring his brand new Fish Texas kayak trailer. That's right, Greg joins a long line of happy customers to get a customized trailer from Nick Finstad out of Glen Rose, Texas. Not only was Glenn getting his first Fish Texas kayak trailers, but the kayak rigging wizard himself, Mr. Romel Labrador of Newport Vessels, was getting his second. Now, other notable kayak anglers that are running Fish Texas kayak trailers are Abby Abinanza, Michael Iconelli, and of course, yours truly, Fisherman GRAMPS, who's going to be getting his third Fish Texas kayak trailer at the Bassmaster Classic. But we'll have to discuss that in a future episode because that one's still on wraps until then. Now, Matt Stefan dropped a YouTube video with this thumbnail, and I couldn't click it fast enough. Having just dropped a video this last week on how I want to get into fishing and learning to fish swim baits, glide baits, those bigger baits for bigger bass, I found myself being introduced to a new bait maker I'd never heard of, but I'm gonna have to give a look. I'll be starting a whole new series around swim and glide baits, that whole rabbit hole in the weeks to come, but this was a really good video. On the subject of swim baits, Shimano is diving in even more by announcing the new Shimano Outlier swim bait rods, and Ben over at the Hookup Tackle dropped a video with the first look of the full line. After that, I noticed Brian over at American Legacy Fishing dropped a video this week covering 3 great price range options for a Ned rig rod, a technique I worked on a lot this last year that led to me catching a few new Lake PB. Ben over at Miliken Fishing dropped a banger this week titled Washed Up Texas Pro Gets Schooled with Live Scope. A hilarious fishing trip with Lee Livesey full of big fish catches and a bunch of trash talking. And speaking of Ben, well, our buddy over at Cerebral Tackle has been dropping some videos looking into the pending legal woes Ben is facing over his lack of having a fishing license when a share lunker fish was submitted. Who knows how this legal battle's gonna play out. And of course, one former bass pro who started a pretty good channel of fishing tips and tricks turned forward-facing hater is still at it. Love him or hate him, if you can sort through all of the Live Scope cheater box videos, he still puts out some quality bass fishing tips and techniques. One I really enjoyed this week is called Late Winter Dock Fishing Tricks. You can find him, of course, over at Intuitive Angling with Randy Blaukat. And hey, it's boat show and fishing expo season. These shows are a great way to meet your favorite bass pros and influencers who may be working at the shows, along with seeing new product launches, and sometimes you can find some actually pretty good deals on fishing gear, merch, and things like that. The National Fishing Expo in Columbus, Ohio runs from February 7th through the 9th at the Ohio Expo Center. Notable speakers I look forward to seeing are Tyler Berger of Bass Fishing HQ, Andrew Hayes from Tackle Talk, Oliver Nye of Big Bass Dreams, and Ohio kayak hammer Gregory Shootman. He's going to be giving a seminar on flipping, pitching, and punching from a kayak. Of course, the show will be full of a lot of great exhibitors, such as our friends over at the Achigan Smallmouth brand, Raccoon Creek Outfitters, Soremouth Tackle, and many more. Drop me a comment down below. Who are you looking forward to seeing at the fishing expos this year? I'll be there Saturday the 9th, walking around with Greg from The Hook Life. I'll be handing out stickers, taking pictures, doing the whole boat show thing. Be sure to grab me and say hi. That's it for this episode. Let me know if you like news like this. I might do some more. Until next time, get outside when you can and make some memories. One cast at a time.